So I propose we start now. Welcome everybody to this webinar organized by NBN on the basics of standardization. And as you can see on the screen, I will try to give you any information you always wanted to know about in terms of standardization. This is not exactly the truth in the sense that this will cover only the basics of standardization, so the ABC. But if you are not familiar with standardization, that's the place to be to get the first pieces of information you need for the future. My name is Alexandre Delafaye. I am a project manager standards at NBN, meaning that I'm responsible for the overall coordination of our Belgian standardization technical committees. And I'm myself the national secretary to a number of national standardization committees. You will hear in a few minutes what this is all about. You have my contact details here if you still have questions after my presentation. This will last for about 30 minutes. That will be in English. I will ask you to keep your questions for after my presentation. You can also type your questions using the Q&A section of the Teams application here, and we'll see that after the presentation. So what will we cover today? First of all, we need to define what standards are. We are talking about standardization, and standards may have different meanings depending on the context in which we are talking about standards. So it's very important to define what standards are in today's context. And the benefits of using standards on the market. Also, maybe you are wondering who is actually behind standards, who develops the content of standards, that we will cover as well. What the landscape of standardization is in Belgium and how you can interact with it. And finally, why you can and you should actually get involved as an expert in the standards drafting process. And then we'll wrap up with a little conclusion for today. So first of all, standards, let's define what standards are. You may not know it, or maybe you know it, but many do not realize that we are surrounded by all sorts of standards in our everyday life. Look around you, and any single object that you can see around you is actually based on at least one or several standards. The office desk, your computer, the lamps that you may have around you, your windows, anything, or the train you took this morning, maybe anything is based on standards, and standards make it possible to have efficient, safe, optimal services and products on the market, and interoperable products on the market, of course. So a standard is actually this. It's a document. It's a paper or digital document with some content, and the content is actually a set of best practices, recommendations on how to do things, how to deliver your services, how to manufacture your product, so that your product or service is as safe as possible, works as efficiently as possible, is interoperable with other products of the same type on the market, etc. And you may have such recommendations, which can also take the form of requirements. By the way, you can have them for products, for services, for processes, for methods. Anything that you can see on the market is based on standards. And the content of those best practices is actually the result of an agreement, of a consensual process among all the parties that are impacted by the use of that standard, or that have an interest in this standard being on the market for their products. So that's very important, the word consensus. You will see in a few slides what consensus is and among whom that consensus is reached. You will learn that actually it can be any one of you. I have put here a few examples. The first one is probably the most known standard around the world, 9001, establishing a quality management system for an organization. We have the same type of standard for environmental management system, occupational health and safety management system, and so on and so forth. The second one is a service standard, giving recommendations or requirements for wellness spa services that are delivered in a spa. And the last one is a purely safety standard on the extinguishing systems within buildings, fire extinguishing systems. Now, there are some remarks to be made because there is often some confusion in many people. Standards in our context, in today's context, are not pieces of law. So a standard, once it is published, is never compulsory in application. Nobody is forced to use any standard. There are very few exceptions, but by definition, nobody is forced to use a standard. So it's not a piece of law. The standard is always of voluntary application. It is not a label. We do not deliver labels. Some standards, it is true, are certifiable. But even in that case, that's a voluntary approach from the organization in question. So like the management system standards mainly are certifiable. You can get a certificate that you comply with that standard, but that certificate is delivered by an independent organization, and NBN is not involved in that process. And again, a standard is of voluntary application always. Even in the case of European legislation, you may know, I will not dwell on this, but you may know that many products have to comply with European Union's directives or regulations to get the CE marking and to be and so that the manufacturer can sell his product on the European market. In order to get a presumption of conformity with those directives or regulations, some European standards may be used. They are called harmonized standards, but they are one means of proving compliance with the directives or regulations. And even in that case, those standards are voluntary. Now, standards, I said at the beginning, standards are everywhere around us. Why do so many organizations use standards? At NBN, of course, we are convinced that standards yield benefits to organizations. We wanted to make it clear with figures, and in 2020, we ordered a market survey that was carried out by the VUB, the Vrije Universiteit Brussels, on the benefits of standards on the Belgian market. And out of that survey, they concluded that the use and the presence of standards on the Belgian market accounted for 19% of the GDP growth in our country, which is an amazing figure. And they dived even deeper into this question, asking all the 700 organizations taking part in the market survey what score they would give to standards and to the use of standards in terms of strategic importance for them. And they gave an average score of 8.2 out of 10 in terms of the importance of standards for their businesses. Even deeper than that, they asked, okay, you gave a score of 8.2 out of 10 on average, but concretely, what do standards enable you to do on a daily basis for your business? And these are the advantages that they saw in standards in terms of importance, in terms of in order of importance, depending on the answers. By using standards, you can enhance the quality of your products and services in a continuous manner. You reduce risks throughout your processes. You can reach a better internal efficiency. And standards, because they are recognized and harmonized across the whole of Europe or the whole of the world, they give you better access to other markets because you talk the same language than the other organizations in other parts of Europe or the world. Better communication with your suppliers or your clients who base their communication on the same standards. And if you are into innovations and you base your innovation on existing standards, or even better, you feed your innovations into a standard, your innovations will be more readily accepted throughout the world because standards are a reputable and recognized tool globally. Now, we've been talking about standards, standardization, but what is now standardization? Standardization simply is the process of developing standards. Now, at the end of that process, you get a standard. There are mainly three types of standards in this context. International standards that are valid and developed worldwide. European standards that are valid for 34 countries in Europe, and they are also developed in a purely European setting. And purely national standards also exist, called NBN, and then you have a figure. They are valid only for Belgium, and they are developed only within a Belgian context. And the content of standards are developed by clearly well-established bodies. From an international perspective, you have ISO, the International Standardization Organization, counting 170 more or less members around the world. Those are actually the national standardization institutes of those 170 countries. On the other side, you have CEN, the European Committee for Standardization, developing standards for Europe with 34 national standards institute in 34 countries of the European Union, but also the EFTA countries and some other neighboring countries. And within those two organizations, you have a number of what we call technical committees. On the one side, ISO TC and then a figure. On the other side, CEN TC and then a figure. And those there are as many technical committees as there are domains that are standardized. So each TC has its own scope. It focuses on a certain domain and is responsible for the standardization work program, for which standards are going to be developed in that domain. Now, this is where it becomes more interesting, probably. So I mentioned technical committees. Let's take one technical committee, 1, 2, 3, in ISO. As I said, it is responsible for its work program, for which standards are going to be developed. So this is a strategic body, so to speak. But a TC does not draft the content of a standard. That happens within subgroups called working groups, WGs. Okay, so there, the standards, the content, the real content of standards is developed and drafted. Exactly the same at European level. Excuse me. Now, this is where it becomes interesting for you, because for each technical committee at international or European level, at national level, at Belgian level in our case, we create a national technical committee that mirrors the ISO or SEN technical committee with the same scope, okay, and taking care of the same topics. That committee is linked. That national committee is linked to the ISO technical committee or the SEN technical committee. And within those within that national committee, you have people. You will see who they are. People representing the position of the Belgian stakeholders towards the decisions that are taken at ISO or SEN level. So that national committee represents the Belgian position on anything that is decided at international or European level, and that is the same for each country around the world. And from that national committee, we also send experts, members of the committee, simply members of the committee with some expertise. We send them to the working groups, and they take part in the drafting of the standards together with the experts from the other countries. And within those national committees, actually, who sits there, it can be you. A national committee is supposed to represent the positions, let's say the collective position of the Belgian players of the Belgian market. So anybody is welcome to those national committees, be they companies, big or small companies, universities, researchers, consultants, NGOs, even individuals with an interest. You can join any national committee, the national committee of your choice, and then you can be involved directly in the standardization process in that way. Now, a few examples here. We have hundreds of national committees. I give you a few examples that are, let's say, a bit more in the spotlight these days. National committees on SDG management, for example, environmental management, covering climate change management, but also greenhouse gas emissions management and other things, quality management, hydrogen technologies, circular economy, which is one of our biggest committees in Belgium, where many new projects are being launched both at international and at European level. Carbon capture and storage, biodiversity, which is also a surging topic in Europe and in the world, by the way, and many others. This is just a sample. Now, we have seen what standards are, who develops standards. Now, how are they developed? Standards are developed through a well-established process, which is basically always the same for all standards. At the beginning, you have a proposal. Somebody has to propose to develop a new standards based on the needs of the market, the needs of their sector, and that proposal can come from anybody, any organization in Belgium and in any other country can deem it appropriate to develop a new standard in their sector on a specific topic, and they will go through their national standards body. In Belgium, that would be NBN, who will relay the proposal to ISO or to SEN. Okay. And at ISO or SEN level, all the countries will be invited to vote on that proposal. Let's imagine the vote is positive. The standard is the future standard is allocated to a specific technical committee and within that committee, allocate it to a specific working group. And the experts within the working group will start drafting the standard. When they have reached consensus among themselves, the draft is submitted to what we call an inquiry. So all the national committees in that field, in all the countries, will be invited to provide their comments on the draft standard, on the first draft standard. So any member of a Belgian National Committee, of the corresponding Belgian National Committee, at that stage will have the opportunity to comment technically on the content of the standard, and also to vote, to say whether this standard should be modified or not before publication, or can it be published as it is. All the comments collected from all the national committees around the world or around Europe will be sent back to the working group. And the members of the working group will review all of those comments one by one, literally one by one. And they will make a decision for each comment. Can it be integrated into the draft or not, or partially? And they have to justify their decisions. So they come up with a new draft, a modified draft, which is submitted to a very final vote. All the countries around the world, so meaning actually the national committees, vote on the draft saying yes or no, it can go to publication and be published. Let's imagine the vote is positive, which is in most cases the case. The document is published as a European standard, EN, and then a figure, or an international standard, ISO, and a figure. And after publication, the document may become a national standard in some countries. That is compulsory for European CEN standards. Any new European standard developed within a CEN context has to be implemented, adopted as a national standard in all 34 countries of CEN, including in Belgium. So any new European standard will become an NBN EN standard without any changes to the content, of course, but in the eyes of the law in Belgium, it becomes a national document. Becoming a national standard is actually optional for ISO, for international standards. We do that, we try to do that as far as possible, or at special requests, based on special requests from stakeholders who need them as a Belgian standard. And after 5 years after publication, there is a systematic review. So all the countries of ISO or CEN are invited to give their opinion on the future of that document. Should the standard be confirmed as it is without any changes? Is it still fully valid on the market? Should part of it be amended? Should the document be revised altogether because it has to be adjusted to a large extent to the market? Should it be withdrawn altogether because it has become completely obsolete, for example? And then the technical committee will make a decision based on the opinions of the countries. So that was the standards development process, which lasts for 2 to 3 years per standard. Now in Belgium, I mentioned several times NBN. We are NBN, and we are actually the official member for Belgium of ISO and of CEN. We are an agency depending on the FPS economy, and our mission is actually laid down in a piece of law, in an arrêté royal, Koninklijk Besluit. And we have 3 kinds of missions. We are supposed to develop Belgian standards when they are needed, and to contribute to the development of European and international standards, ensuring that the voices of the Belgian players are heard and at least are considered at the table of European and international standardization. We promote the use of standards in Belgium by Belgian players, market players, and we develop solutions so that access to standards is facilitated, notably for certain types of stakeholders. So these are our missions. We have over 700 national committees contributing to standardization at international and European level. We have a catalog of above 30,000 standards, which increases by 2,000 new standards per year, including revisions of existing standards. And within those national committees, we have 3,500 experts. What we call experts are actually simply the members who are officially registered in any of our national committees. Okay, we call them experts. Within those 700 national committees, 200 are managed directly by NBN here in Brussels, and we have delegated the management of 500 technical committees to sector-specific federations in Belgium who do have the expertise, the network, and the history behind all those topics. For example, the textile industry, the concrete industry, the construction sector, the gas sector, and so on and so forth. Now, when you register in a national committee, you become an expert. That's the term we use. What can you do when you are an expert in a national committee? You will follow the projects of your choice that are going on at ISO or SEN level, and that happens in real time. You receive all the documentation that is circulated by ISO or by SEN, by the ISO or by the SEN technical committee. You can comment technically on draft standards at the various stages that I showed you earlier. And actually at ISO level, there are even more stages where you can comment on the draft. You can vote on each draft standard, including the very final vote to say that the standard will be published or not. You can, it's a possibility, not an obligation, but you can participate in the drafting of the standard of your choice by becoming a member of the international or European working group. And all in all, actually, you shape the Belgian position, the position of the Belgian stakeholders on any decisions that are taken at ISO or SEN level. Now, that is also a question that was asked to the participants in the market survey of 2020. Many of them were already involved in standardization with some representatives in our national committees. And the question was asked to them, why did you decide to invest in becoming a member of a national committee? And these are the answers that they gave. It enables them to be aware before the others, including before the competitors, aware of what's coming up next in their sector, because all the discussions that happen during the 2 or 3 years of standards development are of huge interest. All those players coming from all those organizations exchange data, exchange best practices, exchange experiences to come up with a suitable standard. And you can anticipate actually what the content of the standard will be in 2 or 3 years' time. You have access to strategic information through all those discussions to develop a standard or to comment on a standard. You expand your knowledge by doing so. You can even influence the standards content by being involved in a working group at ISO or SEN level, and you can thereby safeguard your interests. And you can, of course, extend your network by meeting your peers, so many of your peers at national, European, or international level, depending on your level of involvement. This presentation will be circulated afterwards. You have here a hyperlink to our page dedicated to becoming a member of a national committee. Now, in terms of conclusion, if you need to remember only a few things from today, remember that a standard is an agreement, a consensus among those who are impacted by it. And the standards are always of voluntary application. It's a tool that companies can use to their benefits. Some standards can be used also to comply with legislation and get the CE marking. You find standards everywhere, so including in your sector, there will be a standard probably, one or several standards in application. And if you want to feed your input into the standardization process, or to at least to be kept aware of what's going on there, that has to be done through NBN, which is the official channel through of Belgium to CEN and ISO. So don't hesitate to contact us afterwards, or to surf on our website to get more information if you are interested. We also have a 1-hour e-learning module freely available. The hyperlink is here, giving you a bit more detail, complementing what I said today.